So yesterday I was scouring the modern day battlegrounds of archaeology on X, formerly known as Twitter, which is, well, when somebody says, I was on Twitter the other day or I was on X the other day, you know that there's nothing good that is going to follow that sentence. But I wanted to take a moment and talk about the current state of social affairs among archaeology enthusiasts and archaeologists as a whole, as it's getting to a point where it's just overflowing with toxicity, sometimes on both sides. Now, one thing that I think that academics or archaeologists as a whole have a tough time kind of weeding through is the fact that people that fall on the opposite side of the aisle in the alt history genre don't all feel the same way about everything. There's a huge range of beliefs here. You have people who believe that Bigfoot and UFOs and Atlantis all existed 12,000 years ago and have something to do with each other. And then you have, people like me on the far end of that spectrum, closer to the middle, who can recognize that there are a plethora of things that archaeology and academia has not yet, in my opinion and many others' opinions, adequately explained thus far. What we're going to talk about today, the vases being perhaps the best case in point, or one of the best cases in point. That doesn't necessarily have anything to do with Atlantis or a lost ancient global civilization. It's just the acknowledgement of the fact that there is a lot left to our ancient past that hasn't adequately been explained, and it's people like myself and many others who are trying to the best of their knowledge and as earnestly and honestly and intellectually honestly as possible, sift through these ancient mysteries, find out what's BS and what's not, and try to fill in some of the gaps of these gray areas of our ancient past and archaeology as a whole. Sometimes I find that even though academia and archaeologists try to fight against this unscientifically based community of people who are spreading misinformation and toxicity and attacking archaeology. Well, they can be just as bad as what they claim that they're fighting against. And so I wanted to draw to light one of the worst examples of this that I have seen to recent date. We're going to go through an article that I read yesterday covering Matt Bell, who is an antiquities collector as well as a very successful businessman and a friend of mine. It is an article essentially just attacking him while also trying to, quote unquote, break down his vases and how there's nothing actually mysterious about them. So this is an article written by Paul Barford, published or at least posted to X on May 6, 2024, titled Granite Fantasies, Rubbish In, Rubbish Out. He starts with saying, this guy claiming on social media that super accurate measurements with extremely sophisticated machinery of ancient stone vases with sophisticated geometry and technical parameter are evidence of some lost ancient knowledge. Then he quotes Matt Bell's tweet where he essentially lays out some important aspects to these vases, and then he gives three possible scenarios. He says, so either one, the Egyptians made this and we don't know how or what tools they used, same as the pyramids and the Serapeum. Two, a more ancient civilization made this and the other precision artifacts. Here's an important thing to know is that I do not attribute personally temples and sites found in Egypt to a lost ancient previous non-Egyptian culture. If you want to call pre-dynastic Egypt, Upper and Lower Egypt, an even more ancient advanced culture, then I would agree with that. But I actually believe that the Egyptians did build and construct and craft all of these incredible relics and temples that we see. The problem is we just have no idea how they did it. So for me, it's not an argument of lost civilization, it's lost technology and lost techniques and lost knowledge. And then third, he said it is a modern forgery, which we'll probably get to, but I don't believe that it's a modern forgery, and I don't think that we have enough evidence to believe that either. I mean, you would probably see there would have been a duplicate of this artifact that would have shown up by now. Somebody would have taken a photo of one that looked exactly the same, because if these are modern forgeries, they probably wouldn't go to that extent to make these cuts so precise. And if they had the machinery to do it, we would see duplicates of the same artifact, most likely. Then Paul continues and says, previously we had pointed out that his vase could not be considered evidence because they were unprovenanced items from the antiquities market and thus were probably fakes. Now, see, that's a whole other thing. Probably fakes. there were tens of thousands of ancient stone vessels and pottery fragments that were looted after the Egyptological era began. So to say probably, that in itself is unfounded. To say they're probably fakes based on that is not true at all, because there is an insane amount of artifacts up on these legal markets prior to the late 1900s that you can still buy today, and nobody's looking at them and saying, oh, those are probably fake. That's kind of one of the things that we're going to get into, is that these guys are just as pseudoscientific in their assumptions and accusations as what they claim to be fighting against. And then he says, so nothing would be surprising in them being produced using sophisticated equipment equivalent to modern machine tools because, and then he can't even spell because correctly, they were probably produced using modern machine tools. Well, if they were, wouldn't we see duplicates that come from the same machine? I don't think that they're changing the machining of this every single time that they do this. Now he's showing unprovenanced items from the antiquities market with COAs. Here's the certificate of authenticity. I'd also like to know which Egyptian rose granite is this. It does not look like any of the types currently commercially available from Egypt. So because it doesn't look like it to your eyes, now, see, maybe I'm being nitpicky here, but these guys are just as nitpicky as this. So it doesn't look like it. Therefore, it's not Egyptian rose granite. Okay. So you're just eyeballing it. And we're supposed to respect that when you ridicule people for also eyeballing artifacts. So if there are no more outcrops that could have been exploited, where did the raw material come from, how, and when? The Teddy Kollek collection is a storied provenance. We are told that some 56 years ago, a member of the Barakat family bought it, kept it in a storeroom for half a century before selling it to the current owner. Is there an Israeli export documentation showing how it got to London? The question, which question is misspelt again, can it be proven that it was from the Teddy Kollek collection? Mr. Bell refuses to answer my question of whether there is anything written on this vessel or an older collector's label. A shame. Then again, if Mr. Kollek, who collected mainly Israeli pieces, acquired this from somebody, how did he authenticate that this was an authentic antiquity? This is another one of these things. This is so sloppy to even post. You spell Bell correctly 2 sentences before, and now you spell it incorrectly, and we're on the third misspelling. You couldn't even go back and edit this, and people are supposed to take this seriously. I'm nitpicking, but these people nitpick as much as anybody else, and they will take people apart for things like this. Especially imagine if this was an article written by Matt or myself or anybody else, and we published this, and there was already 3 misspellings. They would call that out. They would say, no, we can't take this seriously. I mean, you can't even spell menial words correctly. So Mr. Beale lightly mentions that in his opinion, the dealer bought, again, another misspelling, bought it from might have been, the dealer he bought it from might have been mixed up in illegal activity. Sorry, that word bout is almost giving me a seizure. Of course, I do not believe that for a second, but here for the record is what he wrote, clutching at straws to make it seem more likely this vessel is ancient. He says, in quotations, there was the 6-Day War in 1967 where Israel occupied Egypt and is said to have stolen artifacts. Barakat was based in Jerusalem at that time and would have been the place to offload the loots. I'd be happy to return it to Egypt if it can be verified as genuine and stolen. A few of my others have 1968 provenance and Uzi Narkis as prior owner. He was the general who occupied Egypt on the ground. William Wallace Welker, nice to have proof, but anybody who has used a lathe and examined these jars already knew that. Modern forgery is unlikely due to the extreme high number of these jars that have been found. Well, that's kind of what I was saying too, is there are tens of thousands of these alone that were placed under the pyramid of Zoser at Saqqara. So to say, for him to just kind of throw around, oh, well, these are most likely forgeries. Well, I don't know, because there are tens of thousands of them. Now, that's not to say there are tens of thousands of them that have these same perfect measurements and everything. I'm just saying that there are tens of thousands of these. So to just immediately say that it's probably a fake, I don't really know if you can stand on that. Update 9th of May 2024. Both he and his alternative past pals seem annoyed that somebody is discussing his ideas, referring to my tweet linking to this post. Matt Bell says, help me out here, David. I think he's talking to David Miano. Why was my post rubbish? Why was this repost worth reposting? You didn't comment on it, and I personally didn't see anything material in it. I didn't get anything out of it except anger, frustration, and division. I am suggesting that there are 3 options. I'm open to all 3. Can we stay open-minded and work together to get some answers? And then Asham Koji responds, Matt, he is unable to criticize your methodology or hypothesis, only provenance. And he says, I beg to disagree. I think there is something material, another misspelling in the post. Yes, 3 options were proposed on the basis of what he saw as evidence, but Occam's razor reduces it to 1. If you cannot document that the object really was made in pre-dynastic times, all the rest goes out the window. It is as simple as that. I'm not sure what part of that would be difficult to understand for a person of normal intelligence. Ad hominems. Rubbish data in, rubbish conclusions out. Get better samples to test your theories on, then we can discuss options. This guy is a British archaeologist living and working in Warsaw, Poland. Since the early 1990s or even longer, a primary interest has been research on artifact hunting and collecting and the market in portable antiquities in the international context and their effect on the archaeological record. So this guy, English is his first language, and he's got a tough time with it. I agree with Matt that there's not really a lot of material in here. I mean, what did he say? You don't have provenance for it, so therefore we cannot take it seriously at all, even though there are tens of thousands of other artifacts found in Egypt that look almost exactly like this. If I had a little alabaster figure that somehow had some really precise cuts on it, but I couldn't produce where exactly it came from because it was looted in the late 1700s, I don't really know that anybody would come after me saying that, no, this 100% did not come from Egypt, because it's probably more in favor that it is real than it is not real, because there's just such an abundance of them out there. And I'm with Matt on this one. I mean, all I get is kind of ad hominem attacks, quickly written maybe to get some Twitter clout from some of his, academic buddies. I'm looking at this live, and this was posted on May 6th. It's now May 11th, and he hasn't even gone back and done any kind of spell checking at all. So clearly, this is a guy who has been an archaeologist for the last, 30 some odd years. Is this indicative of how thorough of research he does and the conclusions that he makes? It's not looking very good for him. This is just one small example of a lot of similar behavior that I see that comes out of the academic community. Do I see behavior like this also coming out of the alt history community? Yeah, I do. I definitely do. And there's one guy in particular that I'm thinking of who is cast a very bad light on myself and anyone else like me who has some alternative ideas to whatever degree we do. Yes, there are people on our side of the aisle that paint everyone in a bad light. And I see the same thing happening in archaeology. I see the same thing happening in academia. And the reality is that people are just people. They sit on 2 different sides of the fence ideologically, but their personalities are not that much different. Everybody here gets all hot and bothered and worked up over small things. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about pre-dynastic Egyptian vases and how they were made. I mean, what is there to get really upset about? And you read this, you can tell this guy is very upset about something. What that is, what's going on in his personal life, I don't know, but it's coming out in this article here. So we're at a point where, kind of like what Flint Dibble said at the end of the Rogan and Graham episode, is that the temperature has got to come down. Now, he said that, and I don't really see that reflected on his Twitter page right now, because, maybe he's got a lot of people coming after him, but, he's got to stick to that too, and we have to bring the whole temperature down, and everyone's got to work together. And all these people who are attacking Matt for legally acquiring ancient antiquities and studying them, and then sharing his fascination with the world, which is really a net positive thing. Wow. Oh my God. People are becoming interested in ancient history. Oh my gosh. I don't know. that really upsets me that academics get so upset about this, even if they disagree with what enthusiasts and collectors' ideas are, because it's pretty obvious that Matt himself is really making a huge investment of time and money to researching antiquities, and they could use him as an asset rather than, like, what is this article? I mean, your time would have been much better spent reaching out to Matt, who's a very approachable, very kind guy. You could probably get access to these vases and come see them yourself, but instead you choose to attack him for a little bit of clout on Twitter. I don't know. It's just disappointing to see the people that are supposed to be the pinnacle of the academic community behave like this. And as I've been able to pull back the curtain and I have seen behind the curtain of the academic community and the alt community, this behavior is kind of typical. To be honest, I would say that people in the alt community, or at least the influencers, the people who make videos and put out things, are all kind of respectful and soft-spoken. There are a few people that I wish weren't around, but man, it seems like there's a whole army of academics that vehemently attack people like Matt, who Matt has never attacked anybody at all. And it looks really bad on academia. And I say that as somebody that has a degree in anthropology and spends time, the whole podcast that I'm working on, Temple Talk, I have essentially only interviewed PhDs and academics, all of which have been amazing people. So I'm just saying it's a disproportionate number. It's not the majority. I really don't think it's the majority. It's probably not even 10%, but that is a very loud minority of people, and it's a disproportionate amount. And it was something just worth throwing on the camera and talking about. And I think that, like Flint said, the temperature in the room has got to come down, because articles like this from a professional are just unacceptable, and it's very juvenile. So that's all I got for you guys today. I'm Luke Caverns. If you'd like more videos on ancient lost civilizations and ancient history and news like this of what's going on in the ancient civ world, well, please like and subscribe for more, as that's really all you have to do to help out the channel. I'm getting to a point where I'm getting close to jumping to doing YouTube full time, and all I could use is a like and subscribe. So I'm Luke Caverns, and we'll see you next time.